I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So
with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, and welcome to another edition of Character Matters. This is where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our day, the character crisis that affects every aspect of our lives, not just in our country, but in much of the free world, much of the civilized world. And this is where we talk about it and share ideas about it. If you want to join the conversation, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I apologize in advance tonight. I've got a little bit of vocal cord dysfunction once again. So I'll do my best to be understood and hope my voice holds out to the end of the program. But I want to invite you to enter the discussion and to share your thoughts and opinions. I have some to share with you tonight. It's been an interesting week or so. We've had many examples, once again, that bring home the points that I have tried to make several times on our program about why character matters and what character is all about and what kinds of things shape it, and why we need to have, more than anything else, an honest discussion of those things that will foster good character development in our citizens and in folks generally, if we're going to survive and prosper, not only here, but everywhere. So I'm not quite sure if the phones are prepared to take calls tonight. I got a message from one of the producers wanting to know if I was ready for phone calls today, and I sent the message back that I certainly was. Last week's program, as you know, was a replay of an earlier broadcast. It was a rebroadcast of the week before's broadcast. I was out of town. I was on a very interesting trip. I attended a peace rally and unity movement day in Memphis, Tennessee. It was a wonderful program. We got to meet with some very interesting folks who are really trying to take back their communities in some very disadvantaged areas, some really blighted areas of North Memphis. Folks who are really on the front lines of dealing with what it's like to be among the working poor in this country, those folks who are grinding it out, working hard, doing the best they can, and still not able to make ends meet very well, and are in neighborhoods that have become fortunately held hostage to drug dealers and other criminal elements who make life unsafe for those trying to dig their way out of dire circumstances. And this is a tragedy. I myself grew up in my earliest years in a very, I would say, poor section of a major industrial city in the north, in the southeastern corner of Michigan. Detroit was once an economic powerhouse, but it always had its pockets of poverty. And my father was lucky enough to be working when my mom and when my mom and he had me, therefore they were able to provide a roof over our heads. It wasn't a very big roof. As a matter of fact, our home had the distinction at the time to be the smallest single-family dwelling in the city. Just a little known history fact. But it was one of several such homes in a very working-class neighborhood, lower working-class neighborhood. But you know what? We didn't know it, because one thing that wasn't true about our city then, that's true about the city now in those same kinds of neighborhoods, is that I could walk or be driven in a stroller with my mother 18 city blocks to my grandmother's house and not have to worry about someone committing a major crime to us, to either abducting one of us, holding us up at gunpoint, doing other horrible things. We didn't have to worry about locking the doors even. We didn't have to worry about any of the things that folks have to worry about 24/7 now in many of these same areas. So I bristle just a little bit when people talk about the connection between poverty and crime, because just about everybody we knew on my block, by any standards, was poor. But we were safe. And we took pride in that neighborhood. And we took care of each other. And I remember those times. We didn't move away from that neighborhood until I was older. We moved away from that neighborhood when I started first grade. That we moved into another working class neighborhood. And we stayed there until I was 10 years old. And then we finally moved up in the world a little bit. My dad went into business for himself not too many years later after we made the second move, and worked very hard and did very well for himself. But it wasn't always that way. And we weren't always enjoying the benefits of a relatively affluent lifestyle. But we were always safe. And we always had the value of community, something that's been lost. And, when we started fleeing neighborhoods, I heard a lot of folks saying that the major reason that we were fleeing those neighborhoods had to do with color. Well, I'm here to tell you it didn't. It didn't have to do with color. It had to do what was happening in the neighborhood. When things started disappearing, when it was no longer safe to leave your doors unlocked, when people started getting hurt, injured, raped, killed, when there was gunfire at night, people started to move. And who could blame them? Who could blame them? Who wants to stay in a neighborhood where it's not safe to raise a child? Who wants to be there? And this is what we encountered, unfortunately, in North Memphis just last weekend. My heart ached. But also, my heart still goes out to the people who are trying to make a difference. We met some wonderful folks who are on the very front lines there, who are sticking it out and really trying to make a difference. And my hat's off to them. There are still people left in this world of incredible character and incredible strength, and my hat is off to them. They deserve a debt of gratitude, and they deserve more help than they are getting. Frankly, the kinds of programs that we have set up, government programs to help people, I am not sure. They're well-intentioned, but there's an old saying about the road to hell being paved with good intentions. I'm not sure that it matters how well-intended we are. We need to look at the results of our efforts. And when what we're doing is not paying off, when we still have too much of our population not contributing, not moving up, not making a difference, then we're not doing something right in the assistance that we're affording folks. So we need to look at that. But my hat goes off to those folks of incredible character who we met last week and who are making a difference. Character does matter. I say that over and over again, and that's the title of this show, and it will remain so. It matters more than anything. And when you have it, great things happen. And when enough people have it in a country, the country is great. That's what made America great. That's what happened during the greatest generation, when we rose to the occasion. We haven't always been great as a country. There have been times that we have had no right to be proud of ourselves. Times of very, very deficient character. Times even when some of our noblest leaders were themselves the most hypocritical characters, spoke out against enslaving people and yet held slaves at the same time. But then there were those times when people really rose to the occasion, and that's made all the difference. So we've had our periods of greatness, and we can have them again. Character is what makes the difference. And we've had some examples this past week or so that I just cannot let go. I have to address a couple of things. Oh, by the way, I need to mention, though, first of all, that I just completed a series of articles on my blog at manipulative-people.com. That's manipulative-people.com. I just completed a series of articles on borderline personality disturbances. And you'll really enjoy that series if you go to the blog and read the articles I've posted over the last couple of weeks, and especially some of the great comments that the readers have posted. I think you'll find them very interesting and informative. You'll also find some interesting articles on the www.counselingwith2Ls.resource.com website that I posted on the UK-based blog. That's counselingresource.com, all one word. You'll find some interesting articles there, too. So I wanted to mention that, and also the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, Dr. George Simon, where you can find videos of me giving some informational seminars. There are some snippets there from some of my webinars that you can get some helpful information from and also leave comments on. And there are some other videos there of the Anthem for the Millennium, which as we approach time for Memorial Day, Veterans Day in November, Veterans Day coming up, activity will be heating up there, and I'll be getting requests for performances nationwide, and I couldn't be happier about that. So visit those sites when you get a chance. But let's get into the discussion about some of the events of the last week and a half or so. Some really important things to discuss. And if you want to enter into the discussion, once again, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I sure hope the phones are turned over and working and that we can take calls. If you want to join the conversation, and you can perhaps email me if you or contact me through my blog site if the phones aren't working, and maybe I can get a message to the producer about getting them up. But to the subject at hand, there are two events in particular that I wanted to be talking about tonight. One, both directly and indirectly, involves this incident in Oklahoma and Moore, Oklahoma, poor Moore, Oklahoma. These folks got hit with devastating storms not too long ago. A couple of years ago, a tornado came through the town and just decimated the town. And now people's hearts are decimated because some individual, some Islamo-radical, beheaded a woman at a food processing plant. He had been talking for weeks about people converting to Islam and getting upset, and he was fired, and we don't know yet exactly why he was fired or whether his proselytizing had anything to do with it or his reaction to folks who were not taking kindly to his attempts to proselytize was part of the reason. But as soon as he was let go from this job, he appeared back on the scene, entered the front office of this place, and just randomly attacked a middle-aged woman at random and began stabbing her. And when he had her sufficiently incapacitated, then beheaded her. And from there moved on to attack another woman and began that assault. And as he was doing so, and just as he was about to once again engage in another beheading, he was interrupted in this, thank goodness, by the COO of the company, who just happened to be a sheriff's reserve officer and who just happened to have a firearm, and he shot this person, seriously wounding him, stopping the attack. By the way, this assaulter is expected to survive. So he will find his day of judgment, we hope, both under the law, and we know he will otherwise as well. But this case once again underscores two things that I just have to say some things about. And I know that folks are going to think that this is strictly politically motivated. It's not. Because when it comes to politics, believe me, I have some pretty hard things to say about both sides of the political spectrum. I am a staunch independent, and I value my independence more than you know. I think both sides have some valid points, and both sides are really pretty whacked out in many respects. And so I take the best of both, and that's where I stand. I'm not a middle-of-the-roader by any means, but I'm a staunch independent. I do have my values and my principles, but I don't subscribe to the philosophies of either side because I know to whom they are beholden, and I don't like to whom they are beholding on both sides. So I don't toe the party line on either side. But this incident once again points out how absurd it is, how absolutely absurd it is for us to think that we can solve any of our character-related problems by making more rules and regulations that only people of character obey. For example, our gun control laws. See, now right away people are thinking, okay, so he's a pro-gun fanatic. No, this is not the case. But I know that we have this Second Amendment, privilege or right for a reason. Why it was included right off the bat. Why the framers of our Constitution thought very quickly after they had drafted this wonderful document we have called the Constitution that they needed to be sure that they got this in. And I know how many people have interpreted it all kinds of ways with regard to militia, et cetera, but we have ample writings of the founders, ample writings that tell us clearly what they intended by this amendment when it was framed. And there are two reasons why you simply can't abridge the right of people to bear arms. It isn't just self-defense against intruders, against those who would do harm to you, and it isn't just for hunting. It's also for defense against a possibly oppressive and tyrannical government. The whole concept of this country was that people of decent character could govern themselves. And it's still one of the most poetically beautiful and profound thoughts ever in human history. I believe that sincerely. You can hear that belief in the sentiment of the song that plays at the beginning and the end of this program. That is what gave birth to this country, and that's what the dream is all about. People of decent character, if left alone, can not only do for themselves and govern themselves, but they can prosper, and they'll prosper the greatest with the least interference. And the framers knew this. So they wanted us to be able to protect ourselves, not just from bad people who would harm us, and they wanted us to have arms not just so we could hunt and provide for ourselves for a living, but they wanted us to be able to take up arms if we had to, because governments, by their nature, tend to want to usurp more and more power. And that abridges freedom. And it's a slippery slope, especially when there's a character crisis, especially when cultural institutions have decayed to the point that what we foster instead of character is character disturbance. When we foster character disturbance, then the government is forever invited into the equation, because people can't be trusted to govern themselves, not when they're not people of character. And that's always the open invitation for the government to step in. Thank God this COO of this company just happened to be a reserve sheriff, a sheriff's reserve officer, and thank God he just happened to have a firearm in his possession. How many other innocent parties might have been beheaded in this rampage of this lunatic? Well, excuse me, he's not a lunatic, and I'll get back to that in just a minute. How many other persons might have lost their lives if it weren't for this hero? And if it weren't for this firearm being on the presence, and also the crime also goes to show you, it's not the weapons, it's not the guns. A gun didn't behead this woman. We are so crazy. We have gone so ever-loving crazy in this country, some people have, to think that we can solve our character crisis by banning guns. You know, of all the folks that have targeted gun-free zones, they targeted those places precisely because they were gun-free zones. All these disgruntled students or would-be Rambo-type figures went back to these places, daycare centers, schools, churches, synagogues, they went there to do their crimes precisely because there would be plenty of victims there who would not and could not shoot back. They wanted maximum casualties, and they wanted to be able to get away with it. And that's why they went there. If somebody were there and armed, they wouldn't have had such a field day. Our lunacy is twofold. We're in deep, 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 I fear almost irreversible denial about what our real problems are. We're in such deep denial. It's character. It's the elephant in the room. It's the undeniable elephant in the room. You know, that phrase has meaning because, you know, the elephant is big. How do you miss it? Well, you miss it because we're in such deep, deep denial about what the problem is. We don't want to see it. We just don't want to see it because it's not pretty. And because it's everywhere. It's not just the really severely character disturbed folks that are in our prisons. It's everywhere. It's a matter of degree. Like I say in my books and on my website and on my blogs and on the other blogs I write for, it's a continuum. It's a spectrum. From mild character disturbance to severe character disturbance. But it is responsible for all of our difficulties, every one of them. From our financial problems, the financial crisis that occurred, to our political problems, to our social problems, especially our social problems and our socioeconomic problems, all traceable to the character crisis, and all things traceable to those aspects of our culture that are fostering this crisis, that are making it not cool to have character, and that are encouraging, even rewarding, bad character. So I want to go back, though, still to this horrible incident in Moore to make another case in point. So I've made the case about how, to the best of my ability, I know that there are folks out there who are so married to their opinions on this thing that nothing's going to change their mind. So, what can you do? But at least I've said it once again, and I'll keep saying it. Weapons are not our problem. Character is our problem. As soon as we turn our attention to the problem, that's the first step. That's what the folks in AA say. You got to recognize the problem before you can solve it. And you got to accept that it is the problem. You got to take that first step. So as soon as we admit it's not the weapons, it's not that we don't have enough rules, it's not we don't have enough laws on the books. As soon as we start recognizing what the problem is and start tending to those aspects of our culture that are fostering it, things will get better. Not until then. But in this case in Moore, I wanted to focus on the mindset of these people who do these crazy things. In my books, Character Disturbance and In Sheep's Clothing, and in all my other online articles on the topics of character and character development, I talk about how there are really two kinds of twisted thinkers. Two basic types of twisted thinkers. There are these folks who say and do these ridiculous things, and you end up asking yourself, do they really believe what they are saying? Do they really think what they just said is right? And basically, these folks fall into two categories. Those that say things that make you believe that they think really ridiculous things, that they really believe ridiculous things, but they don't really believe them. They just want you to believe that they believe them for some reason or another. For example, the disturbed characters who are lying through their teeth, and you call them on it. And then they say, well, I didn't really say that. And you know that they said that. And you ask yourself, did they really think that they didn't just lie to me? Did they just really think that I'm the one that's crazy? And the truth is, no, they don't think that. But they want you to think that because they want you to see them more favorably. And they don't want you to nail them as just a blatant liar. Or they may say, I remember, this is, that takes me back a while, but I'll not forget it. Of course, I've heard this same ridiculous excuse umpteen times. When I first encountered, when I did a lot of training with a lot of folks with serious character disturbances, and part of that training included sexual offenders. And later in my life, I actually set up one of our state's premier programs for assessing sexual offenders. But back in the day when I was still training, about 28 years before I ended my practice, before I retired from active practice, I encountered some guy who had molested his stepdaughter. And it was clear how he had groomed this girl and whatnot. And of course, his excuse was that he was just teaching her so that she would learn some things from somebody safe and wouldn't learn some things in a way from somebody else who would do something nasty to her. Well, and of course, you ask yourself, does he believe this garbage? And many of my colleagues doing the training with me, and including my supervisor, actually believed that this person believed that. And so they thought that part of what the therapy needed to do was to get him to see that that wasn't true. Like he didn't already know that that wasn't true. So when it was my opportunity to interact with this guy in a therapy group, I started asking questions, you know. He really believed he was teaching her. His wife and he thought that, you know, that she should learn from a safe place. And well, if this is true, then how come, you know, you didn't have your wife there? Or how come you went to extra lengths to make sure you only did these things when you're sure she was going to be gone? Or how come you told the girl not to tell or else you would beat the crap out of her and blah, 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 blah. You know, just pressing a little bit. And it was not so much the challenging questions that I did, but the manner in which I asked them. I learned early on the art of benign confrontation, where you don't have a hostile tone about you, but you kind of go with their stuff. You go with the garbage they're throwing at you, but you basically ask them to dig a deeper hole. You let them kind of go with where they're going, but you don't just take what they're saying at face value, and you keep probing, and sooner or later they trip themselves up. And so sooner or later, when I'm asking these questions, he says, well, you know, okay, I didn't think I was teaching her. Well, we already knew that. So why does he say it? Why does somebody say something like that? Well, because they want you to see them as less pathological than they are. I mean, what is a more palatable thing to believe? That he's a misguided soul with good intentions doing the wrong thing? Or that he's an evilly intended soul who has no care or concern for his own child, just wants to gratify at that child's expense? What's more palatable to believe? What's less unnerving to believe? And so that's the whole game. And so there are these twisted thinkers that fall into that category, where they say and do these ridiculous things, and you ask yourself over and over again, you ruminate in your own mind, do they really believe the things they're saying? Well, some folks don't, but they just want you to believe that they believe it as a way of managing your impression of them. Then there are the other twisted thinkers who really do believe the twisted things they believe. For instance, they really do believe that they're a basically good person, even though they know that they are at odds with every single principle of decent conduct that we would like them to adopt. And yet they still want to think of themselves as a decent soul, a pretty good guy. And then there are those twisted thinkers who really do believe that if they take an innocent life, well, they don't see it as innocent. What we would consider an innocent life, they think is a guilty life because the person is an infidel. And an infidel, by definition, is not innocent. You offered the person the opportunity to convert. They turned it down. You really believe that you have a right, therefore, to take their life. Because the book teaches that it's not wrong to kill an infidel. It's not even wrong to lie to an infidel. It's not even wrong to swindle an infidel. And if this wacko even believes that there are 20 virgins waiting for him for his wonderful deed of beheading an infidel, that makes it even worse. So there are these two types of twisted thinkers, and the one that's the most dangerous, the one that's the most dangerous are the folks that really believe the garbage that they believe. Now, we have a serious, serious problem here. And I will tell you that the already twisted thinkers, those folks who have not been able to function in our society because their heads are not on straight, the way they think about things, their attitudes are so off base that they cannot function without hurting other people, and so we have to keep them behind bars. These folks are gravitating toward these twisted ideologies like you would not believe. It is a major problem. And they gravitate toward these twisted ideologies because it gives them an out. It gives them a way to say, hey, wait a minute. See, I knew it all along. It's not me and my twisted thinking. It's not. It's everybody else. And the fact that they're non-believers. And once I'm part of the right group, I will be on top because we will be the ones in control someday, and we will met out justice to all of those who have met out injustice to us. It's a dangerous phenomenon, and it's occurring with unbelievable regularity, with frightening regularity. I will tell you that now. I have firsthand experience with it. I've seen it so many times. You have no idea. The problem, however, is that we have any twisted thinkers at all. The problem is that we live in a culture in which there are so many disturbed ways of thinking, in which there are so many problematic attitudes, that we're not safe. Not only are we not safe, we're not prospering anymore. And because we're not safe, and because we're not prospering on our own, because remember, when people of really good character are just left alone, great things happen. And they can govern themselves. But in the absence of that, government is always tempted to come in and fix it. Make people behave according to the politically correct rules they want to write. Do this, don't do that. You can have this, you can't have that. We know what's best for you. And this is what's happening in our once great country. It's not great right now. It's not. You're not going to hear me say this is a great place. Not now. Can it be great again? Absolutely. When will it be great again? It'll be great when the majority of us are people of really good character. That's when it will be great. America's great when it's good, just like de Tocqueville was supposed to have said but never really did say. That's the reality. That's the reality. Have we had periods of greatness? Absolutely. We've had periods of wonderful greatness. Have we had periods to be ashamed of? Periods of not so much greatness? You bet. Is this a period of greatness? No. The other thing that happened that underscores this whole thing and underscores our really sick perspective on how to tend to these things is what's been going on in the NFL with these players. I was listening to a program on one of the sports channels. So it shall go nameless because I don't want to embarrass them because they're pretty good generally. But I'm listening to this program, and the announcers are talking about the NFL has a problem. Football has a problem. There's something about football. There's something about the league that causes these people to do horrible things, like take cheap shots on the field, cause somebody a concussion, like beat up your wife, like hold up a store, like have someone killed. Yeah, this is a problem. You know, football is what makes people do this. Well, you know what? Probably, I just don't realize it, but probably I've done all those horrible things and should be in jail myself. I played football, and football causes this. Don't you know that? Football causes this. And when I played football, we were members of a conference, and if conferences, you know, like the NFL, that they cause this thing and they've got the problem, I guess the conference I was in had a problem too. Where do we get these notions? This is like a magician on stage who uses the technique of distraction to get you to look everywhere else except where you need to be looking to see what he's doing to trick you. So that what happens appears like magic. I suppose if the media and the pundits get you to look everywhere else for the problem, then you won't look at the problem. You won't see the elephant in the room. The NFL as an organization didn't make Ray Rice punch the lights out of his then fiancée. And the game of football didn't make him do it either. Football's always been kind of a tough sport. It's not the toughest. And look what's even happened to sports, folks. You know, one of the prime purposes of sports in a healthy culture, one of the prime purposes of healthy sports, especially contact sports, is to give young men and women, but especially young men, the opportunity to channel that very natural aggressive energy they have within them in a way that allows them to basically go to war in a controlled and civilized manner. Because this is what we're prone and kind of hardwired to do anyway. But there was a time in that sport, as rough as it was, where we didn't need half the rules that we have today. Matter of fact, we didn't need hardly any of them. And people weren't getting carried off the field. And the spouses of players weren't getting knocked out cold. and the rivals of players weren't getting blown away. Sports was a way to channel the energy and to forge young hooligans, not hooligans, I take that back, young men who had not yet fully developed all the discipline they need to channel their aggressive energy, learn the values of camaraderie and teamsmanship. Sports was a way to do all this, to develop what? To develop character. That was the purpose. And parents, thinking parents, caring parents, wanted their children to enter a sport because it could be a character building enterprise. What's happened to us has everything to do with the character crisis and the aspects of our culture that are fanning the fire. It's that simple. And I'm going to keep saying it. It's not anything else. It's not guns. It's not that we don't have enough rules. It's not that we don't have strict enough laws. It's not the NFL as an organization. It's not the game of football. It's not the game of cycling. It's not the sport of cycling. It makes people use performance-enhancing drugs and then lie about it, and then ruin the reputations of rivals. It's not any of that. It's character. It's always been character. It will continue to be character. And the day we decide to come out of our denial and take that first step will be the day that begins to usher in another era of greatness in America. Until that day we take the first step, we won't be great. We're not great now. We're in some pretty bad straits right now. And more is coming. Maybe a play on words, but more like Moore, Oklahoma is coming. Let me just tell you, the already twisted thinkers among us are gravitating like magnets. They're being drawn to an ideology that will twist them even further. Now, I'm not talking about the healthy practice of what could be the decent practice of a religion that would instill good character. I know I'm going to take this call here. For some reason, we had a call and lost it. We're back. The extent to which folks who are already twisted thinkers are gravitating toward these twisted ideologies is frightening. And we're going to see it happen more and more often. We're going to see it happen more and more often for two reasons. First of all, because there are such twisted thinkers among us. There are too many folks with too much character disturbance who look at the world and who look at others and who look at the way things work in a twisted, unhealthy manner, whose attitude is sorry and dysfunctional. And they are drawn, just like bees to honey, to these twisted ideologies that tell them, no, it's not you and your twisted way of thinking. It's these evil so-and-sos all around you. Join us. We will rule. You will rule with us. And we will teach these infidels. This is growing. I'm just here to tell you, we will see more. We will see more and more and more of it. It's just one aspect of the character problem, and it's going to fester because we haven't tackled it head on. We've refused to recognize it, and we've refused to tackle it head on. And until we do, we're going to continue to have the problems we've been seeing. Can't stress it enough. We've got to come out of our denial and deal with the elephant in the room. So we have these great lessons to learn. I just hope we learn them. We have the great tragedy in Moore, and my heart goes out to the family of the victim who lost her life. Our prayers are with the wounded other victim who is hopefully going to make it. Let's hope that the wounded perpetrator sees true justice. We can only pray that any other would-be assassins out there will come to see the light. I don't see that happening anytime soon. And let's just hope that all those folks who truly believe that we can solve this character problem by taking away people's arms and by writing more and stringent laws, will see the error of those ways. If they just reflect for a single moment at what could have happened in that tragedy, were it weren't for the most fortuitous circumstance that there happened to be somebody there with a weapon to stop it. Thank God. And I will really thank God once there are enough thinking people, enough right-thinking people, to thank goodness for the forethought of our forefathers who recognized that we have to preserve certain rights to remain free. But these same forefathers also knew that this great experiment, this great experiment we call America, this great experiment in self-government and freedom, would not work unless people of character dominated our country. They all said it. John Adams said it the strongest when they were drafting the Constitution. He said, this Constitution won't work, except, he said, for a religious and moral people. It won't work otherwise. It's entirely dependent upon it. And he was right. Absolutely right. That's what makes it work. People of character have always made this country work. And when we find the courage, and when we come out of our denial, and we take that first step, and we start making character cool again, and we start restoring those institutions that build it and reward it, we'll be great again. I hope you agree, and I hope you'll join the chorus. See you.